Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here for this film talk, especially on such a rainy day. But it's sunny skies of filmmaking in here. Thanks for joining us at FilmFest Munich. My name is Wendy Mitchell. I'm a programmer and a podcaster with the Screen podcast, and I'm a big Ira Sachs fan. And I've been lucky to just say hello to Ira like 2 or 3 times over the years, but I've never gotten to properly talk to him. So I'm very excited, and I hope you're excited too. And we will definitely leave time for your questions. This is for everybody at the festival to participate. So I think if you're here, you probably know Ira's work. I'm just going to mention that I think, is it your 10th film? 10th feature or 10th film?
10th feature.
10th feature. My goodness, what a career. The Man I Love will be at the screening tonight. I hope a lot of you have tickets to that, or some of you might have seen the press screening. We're going to talk a little bit about Ira's career overall, and then, of course, about the new film. We'll try, I'm not going to spoil the ending or anything, but yeah, we'll talk about both the wider career and the new film. I'm just going to mention some of his past works are The Delta, 40 Shades of Blue, Keep the Lights On, one of my faves, Love is Strange, Little Men, Frankie, Passages, Peter Hujar's Day, and now The Man I Love. Ira, I want to start earlier than even those. Is sort of what led you on a path, you think, to film? Because you were born in Memphis, or grew up in Memphis, and then was in Park City for a while? No.
My father moved to Park City in the 70s, so I started going to Sundance when I was 13. So that was important for me.
Yeah, were you a very cinephile child? You worked in theater for a while when you moved to New York. What drew you to film? Did you always know film might eventually be your calling?
Yeah. I grew up in Memphis in the 60s and 70s, and I was involved in a local children's theater from when I was very young, and by the time I was 15, I was directing plays.
Oh my goodness! There. Okay, Chekhov, or what was it?
Thornton Wilder was the first. Our Town was the first play.
You have to do Our Town in America.
And then when I was in college, I spent a semester in Paris, and I didn't speak French well, and I still don't speak French well. And I was pretty lonely, and I was living with an unhappy woman and her unhappy son. And so I was kind of like alone for the first time, and I found myself at the movies like 2 or 3 times a day.
Oh, okay, not 2 or 3 times a week.
No, over a course of 3 months, I saw 100.
At the Cinematheque, or where was this? Anywhere.
Paris is the movie town. I saw 197 movies in 3 months, and I thought, I think I have a real attraction.
Now that's film school.
Yeah, I mean, I discovered French directors like Pialat and Truffaut, but also American directors like Cassavetes and Manelli and other things. So it was a transformative moment for me, and I felt that film drew me because unlike theater, it was closer to some form of reality, and I felt that I could make more personal work in film than I could as a stage director. So yeah.
Were there 1 or 2 of the 197 that you still think about today?
Well, it was the first time I'd ever seen a Cassavetes film.
Okay, which one?
In France they tended to show like a group of films for many months. So in that 3 months, they were playing Shadows, Faces, Woman Under the Influence, Love Streams, and Killing of a Chinese Bookie every week for 3 months, and you could go on a Wednesday at 10 a.m. to see one. So I saw all of those films there for the first time. Yeah. But I also saw Ackerman's Year 80s. I saw Police by Maurice Pialat. I saw a festival of Vincent Minnelli, which had a big influence on me. Yeah.
Wow. It's a good thing your landlady wasn't a happy person and got you out to the cinema. Yeah. Did you ever study film formally?
I never studied film formally.
Okay.
So when I graduated from college, I applied to 6 film schools in the U.S., and they all said no. And so I ended up moving to New York right around the time of when The Man I Love is set, which is the late 1980s. And I have to say, New York at that time probably maybe like Munich or Berlin, was a place where artists would gather, and there wasn't this great distinction between mediums. So filmmakers were hanging out with musicians, who were hanging out with poets, who were hanging out with painters, and there was a sense that we were all making something called arts with a capital A. And so there was a really vibrant community. It was also the heart of the AIDS epidemic. So there was this tension between creativity and survival was really part of my life at that time.
When I look at your work, and I'm not going to do this like diagnosis of my theories or whatever, but I think I see very American stories in many ways, but I also see European cinema.
Right.
And I'm just curious, you've already mentioned some that have been American and some that have been European that influenced you. I mean, how do you think of your work? Do you think you're a very American director? Do you think you're in that European cinema tradition in some ways?
Well, I think I'm making films about my own life to some extent, so I think the stories are rooted in American culture. I think my film education, like my family in some ways, particularly the one that's been most influential to me, tends to be more world cinema. So whether that be French cinema, certainly I could say German cinema, or I could just say Fassbinder specifically, but also Asian cinema. When I was in the 90s, I think the influence of Taiwanese cinema and Hong Kong cinema. But I love American movies, and particularly American movies from the 30s and 40s and the 70s. But I think really my stylistic influence has been in a more non-American style.
Yeah. Just because we have you in Germany, can you tell us a little bit why Fassbinder? Do you have a favorite Fassbinder film?
I have a theory that there's only one Fassbinder film.
Oh.
That they are all one film. Instead of, because I don't think you can really distinguish his voice in story. I could, if you were going to ask me which one would I send you to first, I might say, and excuse my English titles, Ali, Fear Eats the Soul, but I would also say one of my very favorite films ever is Veronica Voss. And so...
I haven't seen that one. I need to do my education.
Yeah, that's a good gap.
Okay. To fill. And so when you were working in theater in New York, and then how do you, because I mean here in Germany they have a big tradition of training and film, there's a brilliant film school across the street that's a partner on this festival. How did you teach yourself? I mean, I guess you made some shorts, but how do you even...
Well,
pick up
I never worked in theater after I left college. I moved to the city, and I did get a job as an assistant to a director on a film called Longtime Companion, which was one of the very first films made about a group of young men and older men dealing with the AIDS epidemic in New York in the 1980s. So I was that was the story of that film. But actually, on that set, I learned how films are organized. I learned what departments
who does what, who stands where, where to stay out of the way.
And then I just thought, okay, well, I'm going to try. And so my first short was actually an hour-long film called Vaudeville, which in some ways, watching it now, seems like a kind of precursor to The Man I Love. It's a backstage drama with music about a kind of queer group of creative people making theater, and it centers on a love triangle between three men. So maybe I've just been making that film ever since in some ways.
And is that film out now on your new Criterion? Do you have a re-release of something in the US?
Yeah, I think it's on Criterion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's it's out and about.
And how did you find money for that and for the Delta, that followed? Where did you find money? Did you feel comfortable from the get-go, or did you think, I'm out of my depth, I need to read a Sid Field book?
The good thing about not being a student, and when I ended up teaching at NYU, even though they had not accepted me into the department, I would always say that the one advantage of not being a student is I never thought that there was I didn't think that I was great on the get-go, But I actually didn't think that I was a student at all. I thought I was a filmmaker. So I took myself quite seriously. Like I was making films to be seen and a part of a broader community. So instead of competing with your other student, I was competing with Piala and Truffaut. I mean, in my mind, I was just competing with the people who were great for me.
Yeah.
And I think that that was really healthy.
Yeah.
I think that, and I still am. I call them my monsters.
Okay. They're sitting on the shoulder.
They're sitting on the shoulder, and I'll never be as good as them, and they will always intimidate me, but in that intimidation is influence, right? So it's also inspiration, as you're kind of grappling with a history, you can find your own voice. Yeah. I think what I learned in theater, to some extent, and what I still do is, one, I'm a producer, even if I don't take the title, meaning I like to get things done. So I think I had a sense. And also, there is an art form as a director, which is the art form of collaboration. And I think I have had a good sense of what other people can do that I can't do.
And enable them to do it.
And enable them to do it. Yeah. So I think I just kind of learned how to hire.
Yeah. One thing I definitely want to talk about is I look across that filmography and I see so many amazing performances. And clearly you're someone who maybe loves actors or works very well with actors, even if you don't love them. Can you talk, we'll talk more specifically about The Man I Love later, but just in general, your process of, do you see it as casting as 90%? Or is your casting process quite long? Or do you have dinners for 6 months with your lead actors, or what? How do you prepare with the actors?
Good questions. I mean, those are all the kind of basic of like, how do you create an environment in which people are free, and this is true in collaboration in general, but specifically with actors, free to do things that surprise you and them. Yeah. And for me, yes, I would say casting is 90% of what you're doing. I tend not to cast with any idea that, I mean, I wouldn't even say I tend. I would say I don't cast with an idea that anyone will transform themselves. I'm not interested in transformation in a theatrical way. I'm interested in revelation or observation. These are all terms that I think are, and so. But
transformation you would just see as going too far?
Transformation is the idea that you're going to become someone different than when I meet you in the first moment that I meet you. I think in general, I am interested in creating a fictional atmosphere which encourages actors to bring themselves. The fiction is in the plot and is in the dialogue and in the world that I build around them. But really what I'm looking for is people to somehow be open enough to reveal some part of them which is essential. And I also, quite significantly, don't rehearse with my actors.
At all?
Correct.
Even blocking and...
I block.
Okay.
Which I mean, I block, but I block the actors on the day of shooting.
Okay.
I've worked very hard to block them in advance. I don't just arrive and go like,
where should you go?
I spend, in a pre-production situation for those who are filmmakers, I'll spend, let's say you're in pre-production for 5 weeks before you start shooting, I'll spend 4 or 5 hours a day with the cinematographer.
Okay.
And we are really trying to figure out how to shoot the film and the language visually and movement. What I don't want...
I know, it's apocalyptic rain happening outside, so you're in the right place.
What I don't want is actors to be working to achieve something, which is what I find when you start talking about terms, which I find taboo in my conversation, terms like motivation or obstacle or intention. I really want none of those things to be discussed at all.
Okay. Do you ever say like an emotion or a mood or try it like this? No, that's not you. Yeah. No.
No, I'm more interested in what comes from actors without language, meaning without determining in advance or sharing in advance. They might have an idea. And again, I'm not like, you can't talk to me about that. If they want to talk about anything, I'll talk about anything. It doesn't matter to me. But in general, I think there's an understanding that it's an environment of the unknown, but an environment of safety.
Okay.
Right? So the safety is that the actors can trust that I'm very, I mean, as I'm describing it, it's a lot like the environment of psychoanalysis.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah,
a relationship with someone that you feel enough trust to reveal things that are unexpected or unknown, but also you're not too guided.
Yeah.
So that you have a freedom. I like to tell actors, even though they rarely do this, I like to tell them, if you want to if there's a lighting pole that was put up for the camera and you want to go towards it, go towards it. Like, you can do anything you want.
And we'll adjust. Yeah.
And we'll adjust.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that leads
They
me...
don't tend to do that.
Okay. They're walking into the camera. Yeah, what would you say, not just with the actors, but what is an Ira Sachs set experience like? I mean, do you get quite stressed? I mean, obviously you don't want to see anybody to see you stress, but you're making independent films. You never have enough money or enough time, usually.
From my experience, when I once made a film with a lot of money, it was exactly the same.
Okay.
So I don't really think it's about, often I'll get, let's say I get 28 days, I could use 31, but it's fine. Yeah. It's okay. And I think there is a sense, I think I have a pretty calm set. I've never raised my voice on set, so I wouldn't be inclined to. I think there is a sense that I'm working hard mentally. It's very, very hard to direct a movie. I mean, a lot of things are hard in life, but I would actually say the concentration involved in constructing something from nothing is demanding, unlike anything else I do in my life. So I can't say it's easy. I hope often, I'm just thinking on The Man I Love, I tend to have one or two people who are really I'm extremely intimate with.
Okay.
And
is that like your first AD or your producer?
It could be an actor, but it's often, the person I'm really making the film with is the cinematographer.
Yeah.
And I just remember The Man I Love was a very hard production. It was very demanding. And Jose DeHaye and I, who shot the film, we sometimes would just start laughing hysterically with each other. And I don't laugh hysterically very often. But there was a hysteria also to that laughter.
Okay.
So I think you need someone that you can have a kind of unbridled, unrestricted intimacy with. And yet you're still sitting there alone saying, I can't believe everybody trusts that I'm going to figure out what to do. Because that's really the fallacy of a film set, is this idea that everybody believes you know what you're doing, and you only know what you're doing when it happens. Until then, you're not sure.
Yeah. But you've had some track record now, yes.
That track record
doesn't matter, because you're creating something brand new every time.
It doesn't, I mean, of course you have things that you can rely on, but I'm not sure I was more anxious when I made my first feature in '96 than in my most recent. So it's an interesting process.
Here's my surprise for you, is we have a mutual friend that you don't know about, who is Marie-Therese Gerges, who was one of the producers of Keep the Lights On. She's a great New York producer still. And I asked her what it's like being on set with you. So here's what she has to say. Don't worry, it's not mean. When I worked with Ira, it was my first experience of being regularly on the set of a movie, which is now many years ago for her. It was the first film I produced. I was surprised to find Ira always so calm, very much the opposite of the temperamental and tortured filmmaker that you see in cliched movies. He was even-keeled, pleasant, generous with everybody, friendly to people always, and especially deeply devoted and wonderful with the actors. He was so clearly in his element, joyful even. He loves little more than the act of making art with other people. So nice. I think that's very nice. So thank you, Marie-Therese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell her she got an ovation. That's cool.
Exactly.
I think that's all kind of true.
Yeah, you can recognize some of that in yourself.
Yeah, I can.
I mean, some people love.
I don't love actors, though. I want to just put it out there. Because I would actually say the thing about actors for a director, I'm also a parent, and there's a similarity in the sense that there's you need something from them. So there is an interesting power dynamic which never disappears until you both go home.
Yeah. You have many children out there then, in a way. I want to get into The Man I Love. I know not everybody in the room has seen it yet, but hopefully a lot of you have tickets for tonight. I saw the film in Cannes. I just loved it. And I hesitate to use the word small, but it's almost like a microcosm of one guy's world. It's not trying to tell everybody's story or even the whole story of New York at this time. And I thought it just became so specific and therefore so universal in a way. And as you've mentioned, I moved to New York in '96, so I miss this era. But this was kind of your era in New York. And why did you feel like now was the time?
Still my era.
Still your era in New York.
I mean, I think that's important to me, is that this film actually contains the present as well as the past. It feels very much, there's continuity in the 80s to now for me.
Yeah, some good, some bad, I would say too. Yeah. Why was now the right time, maybe in your life, that you thought this was the right time to look at this story? I mean, you used to hang out with these theater kids. Right. Why now for this story? And does it feel like one of your most personal?
I have been working with my co-writer, Mauricio Zacharias, for 15 years. We've made 6 features together, including The Man I Love. And from really the first days we started working together, which ended up being Keep the Lights On, we talked about this time. And we talked about making a film about the kind of monumental intensity and challenges of that period, but also the extraordinary energy of the late 80s in New York. Almost in direct contrast. Things were so bold in their intensity, like there was death and there was also life. Yeah. And I think and it just took us a long time to be able to have the perspective. It's like people have often, my husband Boris is here, and we raise our 2 kids with their 2 mothers who live next door to us in a New York City apartments, and we have these 2 wonderful kids, and people are like, you should make a movie about that. And I'm 2 things. One, it's not that dramatic, to be honest, which is great. But secondly, I have no distance. I'm living in that life. And I think distance is a really important element. An analytic position is really necessary to have perspective. Yeah.
So now felt like you had enough distance, but also, like you said, you could relate it to today more, see more parallels now, maybe.
I mean, really, for me, a film begins with a story. It's not an intention of making something. And when people are like, why now? I'm like, because I had a good story. A story to tell about a man who's facing the end of his life, who wants to create art and theater, and so that's the tension of the film. Like, will he get to finish or make this one production? And when I described that to a friend of mine when I first was thinking of the plot, and this was right around the pandemic, he said to me, oh, so it's an autobiography. Because the question about what will we get to complete in the time we have is really compelling to me. Yeah, it's compelling to me.
We have to talk about the cast of this film. Rami Malek plays Jimmy, our lead man, who you mentioned, and his partner is played by Tom Sturridge. And I'm already starting a one-woman BAFTA campaign for Tom Sturridge. I think it's I mean, Rami is the showier not performance, but, that's the lead role, we think. But Tom is so sort of understated and really an amazing performance. And a newcomer called Luther Ford playing this sort of sexy neighbor who comes in. Why did you want Rami to play your Jimmy, and how did that?
Well, I had actually, I had never seen before we started working together Bohemian Rhapsody, so I didn't know that film, but I had seen Mr. Robot, and I found Rami a very naturalistic actor in a certain register, and also one that you want to watch. And these 2 elements are really important to me for some sort of star quality, which I think is real. There is this thing called star quality. And And I guess at this point, I can't really think of the character of Jimmy George without thinking of Rami. Like, Rami is the character.
Yeah.
And Rami has that drive,
Yeah.
which is part of Jimmy. He has that passion.
Jimmy has, Jimmy wants to be a star in his own way,
Yes.
doesn't he? So it sort of works, I thought. Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of movie acting is being able to express want.
Yeah.
In general, like being able to show the things that the gap between what you have and what you want is drama, right? And it's also acting. It's like, how do you show how much you want something, but in a register, again, that is very naturalistic. For me, that's important.
Yeah, no, it's not like a bombastic performance or anything. It's so intimate, this story. And
Tom, by the way, is just,
he's great.
I mean, I'd seen him in a stage production in New York on Broadway, and he was amazing. And yeah, he's a great actor who I feel like he hasn't had the chance to do quite what he's doing here.
I know, I would say that too. So thank you for giving him the shot. And how did you find Luther? Because he's more of a newcomer.
Luther Ford, who's like 25 years old, and I found him because he auditioned. Okay. I had, in general now, unless if someone's a well-known actor, then you don't audition them. I don't. But if it's a part that is open, then you start getting these tapes. And really, I saw a tape of Luther reading a scene from the film, and within seconds, I cast him because he was already there. There was no imagination that I needed to have. Yeah.
And so even with Rami, did you have a meeting to talk about everything?
We had a meeting on Zoom. Yeah.
A Zoom meeting, and then he's the lead of your film.
Correct.
Okay.
But that's how it always is. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I like that you know what you want. And with Rami, did he bring any of himself into this character? Do you like people to do that, or is it very scripted exactly?
Well, the script exists, but everything is the person. I mean, I'm thinking of certain moments. I think Rami has a dangerous side to him. Like, there's something a little bit, you can't pin him down, and I think that becomes really the energy of the character he plays. I think the structure of the film creates a fiction, but the performance is Rami.
Oh. And maybe something unexpected can come out from some of that, I guess.
Hopefully every day.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's the kind of goal, is to set up an environment and to create a world that's rich enough, but with enough unknowns that every scene, any scene that didn't create something unexpected doesn't exist in the movie.
One other thing I love about it, and I do, is that we're capturing this moment in time. It's not Jimmy's biopic.
Right.
We don't have a ton of backstory. His sister's in it, but, and I think the word AIDS is never mentioned in the script. So how much do you like to sort of let an audience in on, and how much do you just want them to work it out, or they don't even have to work it out? They can just sort of be in this moment with these people.
I mean, I think you have a job as a filmmaker and as someone creating a story to give the information which is necessary for clarity. Clarity is very important, and I think it's part of, but clarity doesn't mean simplicity. And I feel that in general, my films, and this is something when I watch the films of Maurice Pialat, I feel like I learned a lot, who's a French realist director in the 80s and 70s and 80s and 90s, I think of the film as a middle. There was a life before the film, there's a life after the film, and I think of every scene is also a middle. Like, you should always feel like you're just a hair disoriented until you're not. And I think that's what often happens when people watch my work, is for a little while, and in that way it mirrors the experience of a documentary, particularly cinema verite, where you have a sense, you're slowly picking up enough information to eventually end up in the middle.
Yeah.
If the film works, you feel like you're inside the film instead of outside the film.
Yeah. And that's kind of life, we don't get an explainer
like
for
this
everything.
very moment.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
and we don't know how it's going to end, Ira. What's going to happen?
That's true.
Yeah.
See what happens.
I have to ask about the music of this film. Confession, I've been playing that Melanie song so much that my husband has now got a Melanie playlist at home. And I'm like, what has happened in my household? But music is really, I mean, music's important in some of your films, or maybe all of them, but the music of this film feels so specific. And not only the Melanie song that Rami's doing, but I mean, The Man I Love, and they sit around a table in a very small New York City kitchen, and they are singing to each other. And my first thought with that scene is, this is going to be one of the scenes that I take with me from the whole year. And it also would never have happened with cell phones. Somebody would be on their phone now. And also they're enjoying music as part of their lives, and each of the kinds of songs is very different. So can you just talk me through some of the musical choices and how important music is to you as a person, as a creative?
Yeah.
Do you listen to music while you're writing and some of that?
No, I don't. I think I grew up with a lot of music. My father in Memphis, his best friend was the record promoter, rock and roll promoter in Memphis. So I was like around me, and in the 1970s, I was like around music a lot. To me, music, and when I think about being young, particularly about this character played by Luther Ford, which I identify with as a young person in the 80s, I remember through music. So I remember being in clubs. I remember this idea when you're sad and you're young and you play something over and over and over in order to feel like you're trying to get your emotions to match the world to match your emotions. And so music becomes a route for that. What I tend to do is keep a list. I hear a song and I think that's a cinematic song. I don't know when I'll use it, but it's cinematic. So I have a list of things that and if I'm in the car and something's on the radio, I'll stop and I'll figure out what it is and then I'll write it down. And so I think there's certain music which evokes feeling really, really powerfully. And for me with this movie, and I think really since I made it Passages, which is 2 films before, and Hujar, I'm very interested in how much pleasure you can pack into the image. Yeah. So that there's the story and the plot, but then there's this other thing that happens which is separate from that, which is pleasure. And pleasure is visual pleasure, it's music, it's sound, it's color, it's skin. All these things are, so I think music just becomes a route towards creating pleasure, and pleasure being a very wide word. It can also be sadness as a form of pleasure. And I'll just add that I think that in this film particularly, the characters, whether they be the lead or in this scene you're talking about, some characters you don't see so much in the rest of the film, but they reveal themselves so quickly. It's like karaoke. You suddenly know somebody in a way.
What's
when they
their
start
karaoke
singing.
song? Yeah.
Yeah.
At the table.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. And in the film, Jimmy is trying to put on a play, sort of avant-garde downtown play, very much, that's based on a film, I think, that I had never heard of. Yeah. So was this a film that you had loved, or had you ever seen anybody do it in the theater?
No.
No.
I saw a film in 1989 called Il était une fois dans l'Est. It was a time in the East that was made in Quebec and in the 70s. And I just never forgot it. I just thought it was this film that if someone asked me to describe it, I would say, if Fassbinder made Robert Altman's Nashville. Now that's a pretty interesting film.
That's a pretty good description,
right? Yeah. It is when you see the little bits of the movie. And I in the 80s, as someone who was involved in interested in downtown theater and in college before that, I might have done this thing, which was to restage an iconic film as a play. It seemed very kind of postmodern, which was big in the 80s. So I had an idea that I would do it, and so I did.
Okay. There you go.
I mean, in my films, I've made 10 films, and I'd say 7 of them are about the making of a piece of art. Yeah. So this is, what that piece of art is a really big decision. It was probably one of the hardest decisions of the script was, what are they making?
What is he, like, and because as you've already alluded to, this could be his last hurrah. So it's, what is his life's work going to end with? Yeah. Wow. I noticed we only have about 10 minutes left, so I thought, I know we've got some Ira Sachs fans in here. We've had autographs in the foyer. So I was wondering if anybody had a question for Ira, maybe a film student. And if not, I'll keep going. Don't tempt me. I've got lots more. Do we see any hands? Nobody's brave. Yes, right here.
Hello. Thank you for being here. You said that you do not like to talk to actors about motivation, obstacles, stuff like that. When you feel the scene is developing in a direction that is dramaturgically not what you intended, how do you deal with that, talking to the actors?
Oh, I love that question.
I tend to think a couple of things. I mean, if it's really not going to work, then I probably cast wrong, and there's nothing you can do about it. That happens, but not too often. Often what I do is not what you think I might do, because it's not about telling the actor how to do things better. It's about changing the path of the actor. So usually it has to do with blocking. Somehow the blocking isn't really working to allow them to feel correct with the lines they're saying. Sometimes it has to do with there's too many words. So I'll take out dialogue really quickly. I'll be like, let's get rid of this. It's just too much. I think when I teach, I've been on sets with younger directors in the context of Sundance, actually the Sundance Labs. And often I think you're not paying attention to what's happening in front of you. Like, you're not watching. And if you would watch, you'd realize it's not working. And often it's not working because, as I said, the action is wrong or the dialogue is wrong, and you need to make adjustments for that. It's rarely you need to tell the actor you don't usually have a key, or I don't feel, that changes a performance. You have a key that changes the action or the speaking. So that's often what I do. And then sometimes I say things like, you don't know your lines. Like, knowing one's lines is much harder than it looks. You kind of everybody assumes that the actors know their lines. Sometimes they know them, but they've memorized them, but they don't know them. So sometimes I'll send an actor off stage and I'll say, just run your lines really fast and do that. And sometimes I'll say faster. And that can be really a good trick.
Oh, okay. And I guess sometimes if you're watching, and maybe it's like this question, maybe it's not exactly what you intended, but maybe you will find something better than you intended or slightly different that will still work for you?
Well, I don't have intention like that. So I don't come with an idea of what I'm supposed to. All I'm looking for is, does it feel authentic to me? Oh. And does it seem like I'm recording something that has depth and honesty? So these are the questions, and those are the questions that I'm looking for.
Okay, wonderful question. There's another right there? There's a couple. Oh, there's a couple. Whoever's got a hand up can have it.
Okay, can you pass it? Yes. Hi. You just mentioned that you actually have the influences of art in a lot of your work. Is that something you do intentional, to use different forms of art in your films, or is it just something that happens through your life experiences?
Both, intentional and life experiences. I would say that I tend to make very personal films that seem connected to things that I know more about than some other people, and I think the narrative, the story of the creation of a piece of art seems to me very clear, and it has an arc. And I know that arc really well. So I have found that I can kind of place other tensions on this one. So for example, I made a film called 40 Shades of Blue, which you could say is about the creation of an album. I made a film, Passages, about the creation. So I can say Passages about the making of a film, but I don't give you very much of that. But I give you like 3 pieces along the way, which I know confidently can tell a story, and also can be visualized. I've never written, for example, a film based on the writing of a book, because it's not very visual.
Joachim Trier did one, didn't he? Aren't the Reprise, isn't that about 2 novelists? Yeah, maybe, I don't remember.
I didn't see it.
Sorry, okay. Was there another, somebody else have the mic?
Yep.
Yep.
Hi, I have a question. How much does the story change in the edit room?
Depends on the film. I would say if something doesn't work, it's taken out, generally. Sometimes you're like, do I have to figure, is the plot need this? Is there any way around? But basically, if the scene doesn't come alive, I need to remove it. So that creates certain editorial changes. I think the film, as people say, and I think it's really true, you make a film 3 times. You write a film and you think that's the movie. There it is. Then you shoot a film and you have this idea that it's what you shot, but actually there's only one film, which is the one you make in the editing room.
Do you tend to shoot a lot of takes? Do you have lots of options in the edit?
I tend to have more. I don't have a lot of setups. I mean, I don't shoot like, I like for the camera to seem intentional. Though in some scenes, like the one you're talking about of people out singing around a table, I have much more coverage than I might in other scenes.
Okay.
So I shoot enough.
Okay.
I don't know.
Like
Not
5
so
takes or 50?
No, more like 7 takes.
Okay, good. Because I know there'll be film students in here who are wondering. Is there one more question?
Yes, hello.
out there?
I've got a question about the relationship of this film to Peter Hujar's day. And you mentioned that you started thinking about Man I Love back during the pandemic, and I wonder if this in some way predated Peter Hujar, because the 2 films seem very much like companion pieces.
They do seem like
and indeed,
companions.
Peter Hujar clearly is based on fact. I mean,
Yes.
you've dramatized an interview that really exists. I wonder what sort of freedom you found maybe in this film, dealing not only with fictional characters and situations that, whereas the Ben Whishaw character clearly needed to just recite lines that are down on tape in reality.
Just when you say Ben Whishaw character just needed to recite lines, I'm just. It's to me what's interesting is you're right that one seems constrained and one seems free, but that I have to say by the time I was shooting Peter Hujar, it didn't feel that way. I felt an enormous amount of freedom on set. The very challenging thing, so Peter Hujar is a film about a conversation that took place in 1974 between the photographer Peter Hujar and his friend Linda Rosenkrantz, and it was recorded, and I made a film of the transcript of this recording, and it's pretty much exact from the transcript. So the real challenge of Peter Hujar was, it was a conversation that was taped. So it was 2 people talking over a tape recorder, and there was no reason for them ever to stand up or move. And that was a crisis when I was making the film, because I was like, this was a bad idea, because it's absolutely non-cinematic. Once, after a really difficult creative moment, I figured out how to break that film up into many different scenes and many different locations. Then it became very free for me, even though there was an exact dialogue. I think what was really nice about Peter Hujar and is almost never been, I've never felt this quite as much, is that those 2 actors, Rebecca Hall and Ben Whishaw, they had no idea what they were making, literally. It didn't make, on a set, it just, why am I here and then I'm there? Like, because I told you to. and there was such trust in me that I felt really, really free because of that. I felt like they believed that we were making something even before I did. And that was a real gift to that film.
Do you see them at all as I mean, I can see them just as an audience as sort of relatable to one another, those
Well,
films.
I will tell you about a short film I made called Last Address, which I made in 2010. And it's an 8-minute film about a group of New York City artists who died of AIDS. And I shot the homes in which they lived at the time of their death from the exterior. And there's no biographical information except their name and the address. And what's interesting, I just did a screening of Peter Hujar, then Last Address, then there was a little break, and then there was The Man I Love. And Last Address was actually the film that, to me, connects those 2, because Last Address has absolutely no human information in it. It's only like, what do buildings contain and what history do they hide? And then Peter Hujar and The Man I Love are the inverse of that. There's almost no exteriors in either of those films. There's just what happens inside. So I think for me, Hujar and The Man I Love are attempts to say this is what life looked like, and this is what life is, as opposed to another way of looking at particularly AIDS, because Peter also died of AIDS, is like some sort of tragedy, which means those people never lived. They were just victims. These were not victims, they were people. And so the films are both expressions of life.
I'm about to cry. That's so beautiful. And I'm thinking of Man I Love, which I'm excited to see again tonight. We're out of time, but I just wanted to say a huge, well, first of all, what amazing audience questions. That was really thoughtful. Thank you, everybody who came and thought of something for Ira. And thank you, Ira, for being here in Munich. And also thank you for 10 films. And I can't wait to see what's next. And who's coming to The Man I Love tonight? Yes,
well, good.
We
Thank
will
you.
see you there. Thank you so much, and thank you to Ira.
Thank you.
I know, would you like a beverage?